CBC News has learned that a team of Honda executives will be in Canada this week to meet with officials from the federal government. This comes after a Japanese news outlet reported this weekend that Honda is looking at investing more than $18 million to build an electric vehicle plant here that could also produce batteries. The automaker is reportedly looking at a site next to its existing facility in Ontario, among a number of other possible locations. Okay, for more on what this potential deal could mean, Flavio Volpe is the president of the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association, and he joins me now. So Flavio, the federal and Ontario governments have already made investments in other EV battery producers like Volkswagen and Stellantis. What's special about the possibility of a deal with Honda?
First of all, Honda is already here. They've been here for 38 years, making the best-selling car in Canada, the Honda Civic. They are one of the world's leaders in environmentally friendly and very fuel-efficient internal combustion engines. So that when they take their shot at EV and batteries, and that they consider doing it here, this is the real Shohei Ohtani deal for Canada. When they talk about $18 billion in investment, that's the company's investment envelope, which would make it two and a half times as big as the Volkswagen one, which was the biggest one in Canadian history, after the Stellantis one, which was the biggest one at $5 billion. So you're seeing a scale difference here that's incredible. Okay,
I'm glad you said 18 billion with a B, because I said 18 million with an M, and I'm wrong. It's 18 billion, because you're not getting much for $18 million in electric vehicle manufacturing these days. But you know, the Canadian officials are meeting with representatives of Honda this week. Now, sometimes a meeting is just a meeting, but what do you make of this? They had the news report coming out of Japan, statements which did not throw any water on the speculation at all, and now we find out there's going to be a meeting here in the nation's capital.
Well, I think that your viewers need to understand that this is probably happening with 20 automakers right now. Mm-hmm. Canada and Ontario or Quebec going out and pitching these automakers, say, look, we have the people, we have the resources, we have the infrastructure, come and invest here, bring us your best proposals. And those automakers coming with responses. Very importantly, I think we all expected that Honda would be having conversations with the government of Canada, because they're one of the biggest investors in this space in this country. That site in New Tecumseh in Alliston is the biggest employment site in Canada. And they've designated that plant after we signed the CETA with Canada-EU trade agreement. They designated the global lead plant for their Honda Civic. So it's already a strategic plant where they sell to Canadians, they sell to Americans, and it's the window into Europe. And so the idea that we might have a shot at this, and I think we're probably talking about it because we're on a short list, should be very exciting to everybody who's in the auto sector, but also for people who aren't, to understand that the biggest single employer in Canada is considering doubling down here with the products that they're going to export around the world. You know, it couldn't be a better profile.
You mentioned CETA and the Europe trade agreement we had there, and how this became, the main hub for their most popular car. Europe is also coming down pretty hard on the idea of the gasoline engines and going aggressively into the transition to electric vehicles. If it was good enough for the Civic, it seems good enough for the electric Civic, right? Do you think that is what plays into the thinking there corporately?
Right. I think Honda Civic is an iconic product that will tell us whether we can get close to this 100% EV target or not. I've been saying it's impossible because cars like Honda Civic are for regular people who have a regular income, who go out and buy $20,000, $25,000 cars. If the EV batteries cost $20,000 to $25,000, it's hard to see how we're going to sell vehicles in that sense. If Honda says they can do it, and they're going to do that here because they've already got an existing supply chain and a platform, but close to those raw materials, we should absolutely partner with them if we are serious and not just rhetorical on getting to 100%. And if Honda cracks that code here and sells into the US to help the Americans achieve their targets and into Europe to achieve those targets, well, we've won an investment that the only way that could be better is if Honda was a Canadian car company and that, all those decisions were domiciled here.
There's a lot of money though that goes into this, right, Flavio? We've seen billions of production subsidies. They got to build the batteries and sell the batteries to get the money, but put on the table for Stellantis, for Volkswagen. We've seen in Europe today was it 902 million euros for Northvolt to build a factory in Germany. I mean, what kind of an outlay do you think Canada could be looking at if Honda is going to do this in Canada, given that there's precedent of multi-billion-dollar deals on the table already?
If the reports are correct, and what Honda is contemplating here is building a hub that manufactures the vehicles, and then the intelligent technologies that manage the batteries and the powertrain, and then the batteries, we're going to see what I think is a disproportionately lower federal subsidy to be able to land this one here, because it won't be tied to how many batteries do you make and when do you make them. And I think what we're looking at is a potential production start that brings us way into this 10-year window that was us matching the American IRA on battery production. I think this might be a traditional deal where we say, look, you want to be in the major leagues, what's the franchise fee? It's participating in the factory, in the tooling, in the initial capital. So, I think Canadians have been preconditioned to hear these battery deals are going to cost tens of billions of dollars over a course of 10 years. Well, this is Honda saying, no, we're going to invest tens of billions of dollars. And I think that if we get to the point where the next time you have me on is because we've landed this, you can quote me. I think that number is going to be a lot smaller than the numbers that we've seen to date.
Right. So rather than a production subsidy, because they now have the tax credits more or less ready to go in a lot of cases, those would probably apply with a lot of the investments, and then the sort of ballpark capital investment money up front through the Strategic Innovation Fund. You think it's going to be that kind of a deal rather than production subsidies?
It is, because the only reason we were in production subsidies on batteries was because we needed to match the Americans, or else we wouldn't have been competitive. There is no production subsidy on cars, and Honda is proposing here, according to the report, making those cars. And so when it's just cars, it's that Strategic Innovation Fund, it's those green investment tax credits on the original build, and then have at it.
How big, just as a final point, would this be for the Canadian EV industry if Honda does do this? I know you're part of this industry, right? So you get how important Honda is and its existing facilities. What would something like this mean for that sector and its ability to become this big player that the government's clearly betting on?
So a lot of people who are not in the industry think that the success of companies like Tesla or VinFast or BYD out of China is what's going to define the future. Our success against targets is going to be defined by the best engine companies in the world, like Honda. How do they manage this transition? They have the volume capacity, they have a century of technical know-how, and they have this cultural commitment to transitioning this all properly. Doing it here, first of all, is unprecedented. I don't know anybody else that has proposed to do that. And doing it at a scale, $18 billion of investment in one place is incredible. Over the past 15, 20 years, I've been involved in trying to land new automotive plants. They usually sound like 800 million, 1 billion, 2 billion.
Right.
What Honda's talking about here is making Alliston, Ontario, potentially New Tecumseh or the area around it, their number one hub in this hemisphere, and it will be absolutely transformational for the region.
Flavio Volpe, thank you for your time as always, the president of the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, David.